Most women spend years mistaking crumbs for a feast. They sit at tables where their hearts are half-starved, waiting for a man to hand them a fragment of attention, a fleeting word of validation, a delayed text that feels like a gift. They dress their wounds in hope, convincing themselves that the small, inconsistent offerings are proof of love. Yet the soul knows. Deep in the feminine psyche, there is a quiet voice that whispers, "You were not born for scraps. You were born for the banquet of life itself." In the realm of archetypes, she appears as the forgotten queen. She is draped in a robe of shadow, wandering palace halls that exist only in her imagination. This queen has abdicated her throne to become a servant in her own story, waiting for someone else to recognize her worth. She polishes the flaws of other people's lives, hoping they will notice the shine and call her valuable. But the tragedy of the forgotten queen is this. As long as she accepts crumbs, she will never be invited to the table where her soul truly belongs. Every woman who has lived this pattern knows its flavor. The pattern begins in subtle ways. A man who is too busy to see her, but never too busy to ask for her energy. A friend who drains her but rarely gives. A life where her own dreams are always postponed. Each time she accepts less than what her heart truly desires, she feeds a shadow. This shadow is the inner beggar, the part of the psyche convinced that love, attention, and respect are scarce. The beggar clutches at crumbs with trembling hands, afraid that if she reaches for more, the little she has will disappear. Jung taught that what we refuse to confront in our shadow will rule our lives from the dark. And so the woman who does not confront her inner beggar becomes trapped in cycles of quiet suffering. She tells herself that patience is noble, that self-sacrifice is love, that one day he will see her value if she just waits, pleases, and bends a little more. But the unconscious does not lie. Her body feels the humiliation. Her soul feels the erosion. Each crumb she accepts writes a story in her nervous system. I am not enough to receive the whole loaf. Yet there is another side to her, a figure the Stoics would recognize, the inner sovereign. Marcus Aurelius would have called her the master of her own mind, the one who knows that no man's approval can add to her essence. She is the queen who remembers herself. When this archetype awakens, the dynamic shifts entirely. She no longer asks, "Why doesn't he choose me?" She asks, "Why am I sitting in a place where my soul is starving?" To reach this transformation, the woman must walk through a corridor of fire. It is the fire of withdrawal, the burning of every illusion that once made the crumbs taste sweet. She will feel the ache of detachment, the cold silence of empty space where his texts, calls, or gestures used to land. This is the crucible where the inner beggar dies and the inner sovereign is born. The Stoics spoke of this as a form of freedom, not freedom from love, but freedom from the chains of dependency on what cannot truly nourish you. Imagine her now, standing in her own life as if seeing it for the first time. She notices the chairs where she has been kneeling, the tables where she has been eating off the floor. She feels the weight of every compromise she made against her own soul. And in that moment, something shifts. She does not rage, she does not beg, she simply rises. This rising is not loud, but it is seismic. The energy that once leaked toward proving her worth to others now coils inward, igniting a flame in her chest. It is the fire of remembrance. This is the moment every man, every friend, every connection feels without needing words. The woman who no longer accepts crumbs changes the gravity of her world. She does not chase, she does not plead, she does not wait for someone to come and fill her plate. She becomes the feast, the rare, radiant, untouchable force that can no longer be ignored. She begins to sense the hunger that had been numbed for years. It is not only the hunger for love, but the hunger for wholeness, for the life that mirrors her inner dignity. The woman who awakens to this hunger can no longer sit in the shadows of someone else's priorities. Her soul refuses to be anesthetized by half-hearted gestures. She realizes that the crumbs she once clutched were not gifts, they were distractions, keeping her from confronting the terrifying truth that she had abandoned herself. In Jungian terms, this is the confrontation with the shadow of self-betrayal. The shadow whispers, "Stay small, stay silent, take what you're given and be grateful." It is the internalized voice of every moment she felt unworthy in childhood, every time she absorbed the unspoken rule that her needs were excessive or inconvenient. And yet, there is also a rising storm within her, the animus, the inner masculine, the force that insists she claim space, speak truth, and act in alignment with her worth. When she listens to this energy, the old patterns begin to shatter. At first, this awakening feels like grief. She grieves the years she spent kneeling at the wrong tables. She grieves the versions of herself that twisted into knots, believing that love could be earned through suffering. She grieves the illusion that if she was patient enough, pleasing enough, selfless enough, someone would finally see her. This grief is sacred because it burns away delusion. It is the fire that clears the forest of deadwood, making room for new life to grow. The Stoics would call this moment the reclaiming of agency. Seneca once wrote that a man who depends on the gifts of fortune is always a slave to it. In the same way, a woman who lives on emotional crumbs is chained to the whims of another's inconsistency. But when she turns inward, when she realizes that her value is not negotiable, the chains fall silently to the ground. She no longer reacts to absence with desperation, nor to attention with trembling gratitude. She simply witnesses both with the calm authority of someone who knows her own soul cannot be diminished. This is the paradox. When she stops chasing, when she stops begging for the bare minimum, the energy of the world around her shifts. Some men, sensing her sovereignty, will rise to meet her with real presence, respect, and devotion. Others will vanish, unable to feed on the weakness they once exploited. The friendships and connections that were built on imbalance will tremble and fall away. And though loss is inevitable, it is also liberation. The empty space left behind is not a void. It is fertile ground for the life she was always meant to live. Imagine her now, walking through the corridors of her own psyche, past rooms that once echoed with longing and self-doubt. The forgotten queen is gone. In her place walks the sovereign woman. Her posture is different. Her gaze is steady, luminous. When she enters a room, she's no longer scanning for scraps of validation. She's radiating her own essence, unshakable and magnetic. This is not arrogance. It is the natural glow of a woman who no longer negotiates with her soul. And life responds differently to her. Opportunities seem to appear where before there were only closed doors. Men who once offered her the minimum sense the shift, but their old tricks no longer work. The silence she once feared has become her sanctuary, a temple where she hears the voice of her own intuition. Every decision now passes through a single filter. Does this honor my worth, or does it diminish me? For the first time, she understands the law of the psyche. You do not receive what you wish for, you receive what you believe you deserve. And belief is not a thought, it is an embodiment. When she embodies self-worth, she becomes untouchable to those who only offer less. Her energy no longer leaks toward proving, performing, or pleading. She has become the feast, and only those who can approach her table with reverence may sit. But the path to this sovereignty is not paved with ease. There is a trial every woman must face when she chooses to stop accepting crumbs, the confrontation with loneliness. At first, the silence feels like punishment. Her phone does not light up the way it used to. The invitations, the half-hearted check-ins, the inconsistent gestures that once gave her a small thrill begin to fade. She walks through her life with an almost unbearable awareness of absence. the absence of those who were never fully present to begin with. This is where many women falter. The shadow of the inner beggar returns, whispering, "Go back, settle. A little attention is better than none at all." It seduces her with memories of fleeting warmth, the comfort of familiar patterns, even the thrill of anxiety she mistook for love. But if she resists, if she dares to hold the line, something miraculous begins to happen. The emptiness that once felt like abandonment transforms into sacred space. This space is the womb of rebirth. It is here, in the fertile dark, that she meets the parts of herself she abandoned long ago. She remembers the little girl who once dreamed without limits before she learned to beg for affection. She meets the young woman who silenced her desires to keep the peace. She embraces the version of herself who tried to earn love by shrinking, apologizing, or overgiving. One by one, she calls these fragments home. This is the work of individuation, the Jungian journey of becoming whole, and in this wholeness her standards rise without effort. She no longer practices detachment as a performance. It flows naturally from self-respect. She doesn't need to announce her worth or demand recognition, because her energy now communicates what words never could. A man may approach with charm, excuses, or promises, but her body recognizes the vibration of CRUMBS. There is no anger, no drama, only a quiet, immovable no. The Stoics would see this as the highest freedom. Epictetus taught that suffering arises not from what happens, but from our attachment to it. And the woman who has reclaimed her throne no longer attaches her identity to anyone else's treatment of her. She observes life with serene authority, knowing that her value is constant, her heart is her own, and her peace cannot be bargained away. The man who can meet her fully is welcome. The one who cannot is simply a passerby in her kingdom. As she grows into this new embodiment, her outer world begins to mirror her inner shift. Relationships that were brittle or unbalanced naturally dissolve. She attracts people who see her not as a convenience, but as a force of nature. She notices that opportunities open where she once felt trapped. The universe itself seems to respond to the frequency of a woman who has stopped negotiating her worth. And perhaps the most profound change is internal, the disappearance of the hunger that once drove her. She is no longer starving for validation because she feeds herself with her own presence, her own attention, her own love. This self-nourishment is not selfish, it is sacred. From it flows a different kind of connection, one rooted in mutual respect rather than desperation. Picture her now. She moves through the world like a tide that cannot be ignored. She does not chase, she does not grasp, she does not explain why she deserves more. Her life is the explanation, her boundaries are the proof. Her silence, once born of fear, now carries the weight of command. Those who approach her feel it instinctively. They are either called to rise or quietly turn away. The woman who stops accepting crumbs does not become hard or cold. Paradoxically, she becomes softer, but in a way that no longer bleeds. Her heart opens without fear because she knows she will never abandon herself again. And in that self-loyalty, she becomes magnetic, radiant, untouchable in the truest sense. She is the queen returned to her throne, the banquet she once searched for in others, now overflowing from within. There comes a moment when the transformation is complete, not because the world has changed, but because she has. The woman who once chased crumbs now walks in a realm of abundance that exists first within her own psyche. She no longer waits for a man's call to feel desired, nor a fleeting compliment to feel beautiful. She is both the fire and the light. This is the essence of the feminine in her fullness, magnetic, not because she is chasing, but because she is standing still, rooted in the truth of who she is. Yet this stage of becoming carries its own challenge. The outer world will test her commitment to herself. Old patterns may try to reappear in new disguises. The charming man who offers attention without devotion. the opportunity that looks shiny but requires her to diminish herself to take it, the friend or family member who thrives on her self-betrayal. These are the archetypal tricksters of the feminine journey, the echoes of the past inviting her to step backward into scarcity. But now, her response is different. She no longer negotiates with ghosts. When the shadow comes knocking, she does not open the door. Her energy is no longer porous. Jung would say that the anima, the inner feminine, has integrated with her inner masculine strength. She is soft and receptive, yet shielded by the unshakable presence of her own self-respect. In this alignment, love begins to feel different. She understands that to be truly chosen is not to be begged for, but to be met as an equal. She stops searching for intensity in inconsistency and starts seeking depth in stability. Her soul is no longer impressed by dramatic highs and lows because she knows that real love does not come in crumbs. It comes as a steady, nourishing presence. And in this knowing, she stops performing. She stops bending. She stops waiting for anyone to see her because she is too busy living as the woman she was always meant to be. The Stoics would recognize this as living in accordance with nature, not the nature of the world's chaos, but the nature of her own essence. She wakes each day no longer desperate to control how others treat her, because she understands that their behavior reflects them, not her. She has freed herself from the tyranny of external validation, and in doing so, she has become irresistible in a way that has nothing to do with appearances or effort. It is the quiet, gravitational pull of a woman who needs nothing, yet inspires everything. And here is the unspoken truth that few dare to admit. When a woman truly stops accepting crumbs, the dynamics of her life become undeniable. Men rise or they fall away. Opportunities either honor her or disappear. Friendships that relied on her self-erasure evaporate. This is not punishment, it is purification. Her world aligns to the frequency of her self-worth, because the universe, like the human psyche, cannot long tolerate a mismatch between belief and reality. Picture her life now, the home that reflects her soul, the calendar that honors her energy, the relationships that are mutual, rich, and alive. She moves through her days with an ease that once felt impossible. It is not because life is free of challenges. It is because she no longer bargains her essence for temporary comfort. Even in moments of solitude, she feels full, whole, and unshaken. And those who encounter her feel it. They may not have the language for it, but they sense a woman who will never again accept less than she deserves. She does not need to demand priority because her energy commands it. She does not need to explain her standards because they are written in the way she lives, the way she walks, the way she simply exists.